welcome back to my PMP series. We are now on the create work breakdown structure process, and this is where we subdivide the project deliverables that we've defined back then in the define scope process, and we break it down into smaller, easier to manage components. Now, why are they easier to manage? Because you can take the whole lump sum work and break it into smaller, maybe task-oriented or nature of work oriented. So for example, plumbing work, electrical work, each would be separate, and IT work would be separate. So you could break it down as you wish, and then assign a team lead to work on each part separately. So this makes it easier for the team lead to focus on their own tasks. Now, if you're doing it using software like Microsoft Project or Primavera or any other tool, then when you break it down into these smaller pieces, you can assign, now this is outside of the scope of PMP, but each piece of these could be assigned authority to that specific team lead to make changes in it. And whenever there's a problem on the project, you can pinpoint where exactly the project problem is happening by looking at which of these tasks or boxes on the WBS is lighting up as red, or depending what your software does. So for example, if you had, let's say, a delay in one of the tasks or one of the activities, then you can probably have a negative float at that point, and the negative float could trigger a red color in one of these boxes. So in a way, it allows you to be able to drill down into which part of your project is really having a problem, rather than looking at the whole project as one piece. It makes it easier to manage. This is a hierarchy. It comes from the top to the bottom, and it goes from the whole project to the smaller pieces. Let me show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like here. You can see at the very top here, this is the whole project right there. And it's being divided into 4 pieces right there. And these 4 pieces represent all of the work. So if we complete all these 4 pieces, which are marked 1.1 here, and it goes to 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, if all these 4 pieces are completed, then that project is considered completed. Now, you could further break these down into smaller packages, and mind you, this is what we call them. We call them work packages, but not all of them are work packages. I'll explain that in a little bit, but just imagine you took this 1.1 here, that's the first one, the first box, and you divided it into 4 parts. So you see that? You have 1.1.1. Notice how the name carries through, because the upper one was 1.1. Then the second one is going to be 1.1.1. Let me just highlight these things here. Hold on. Draw. I'll just highlight. So you had 1.1. You have 1.1 here. Then you have 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and you can see that the name carries through. You keep the 1.1. Now the 1.1.2 that we see here, when it's broken down below, you'll see that it has 1.1.2, but it adds a 0.1, and 1.1.2, and it adds a 0.2. And once these areas are completed, once these 2 are completed, then this one is complete. And once all 4 are completed, then 1.1.1 is completed. Now we have a total mess on our screen. Let's clean it up for a little bit. And then let's go back to drawing. So if this and this are completed, then this one is completed. This and this are completed, then this is completed. This and this are completed. This is completed. This one here on the right, 1.1.4, is not broken down. That is what we call a work package. So that's the work package right there. And the other 6 that you see below, 1.1.1, 1.1.2, all these are called work packages because they are not further broken down. So the ones that are at the very end of the chain that are not further broken down, we call these work packages. So this is a work package, work package, work package. And incidentally, these are all work packages. All the ones that I marked are work packages, and that's because you don't see them broken down into smaller pieces. Whereas if you look at the one on the left, 1.1.1, that one is broken down into two pieces. Therefore, we just call this one a node. Okay, so this is a WBS node. That's the one that we show here. It's a node, and it's broken down into the work packages. The numbering sequence carries through. You could have a name sequence, so it can be, for example, construction.electrical, construction.plumbing. So you could have a name sequence, name.this.that, according to what the packages are, the sequence, the way they go down, or it can be just numbers like you see here, starting from 1 at the very top, and then going down to 1.1, and then you see if you follow the sequence here, 1 to 1.1 to 1.1.1 to 1.1.1.1, like that. So that's how they sequence down. Completing the lower level completes the upper level. And one more thing about the WBS is that what you see here is the intended scope of work. So whatever you don't see, you should not be expecting it to happen, all right? That's the expectation, is that this represents all of the scope of work that I intend to get done on the project, all right? Let me see what was on the previous screen here. Not sure if I missed anything. There's one thing that I left out here or I didn't discuss, and that's the concept of decomposition. So here, decomposition, that's a keyword that you need to know for the exam. When we break down the scope of work into smaller pieces, that process is called decomposition, all right? So remember the word decomposition. Later on, when we break down the scope of work, or when we break down each work package into its own activities, that's also going to be called decomposition. So now what we have is the WBS has been created. Previous to that, we have the scope statement. So that's the scope statement, that's the WBS, and each WBS is going to end up with work packages at the lowest level. Now, every work package, let me take you back to the previous screen. Every work package that you create, every work package here, you can see that it has a small writing on it, right? You see that small writing that is on it. For example, this one says current system audit. So there's only so much information that you can put into any of these boxes. The details of what goes into that WBS typically sits in what we call the WBS dictionary. The WBS dictionary, this one here, these are the details. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to open a Word document. I'm going to show you a WBS that has been prepared in Microsoft Word and show you what the WBS dictionary is. Okay, so I have opened the Word document. This is the WBS in Word format. WBS structure as it states here, and all of the details about who this document is prepared by, and some version control. But when you get down here, see, this is a WBS right there. That's a WBS. And you can see that these are created with Microsoft Word. If you click on any of these, you can go ahead and maybe edit it, make changes to it as you wish. I'm not a big fan of doing it like this unless you're creating a very small document, a very small WBS, because it can be complicated later on when you need to insert another piece into this WBS. Lower than this, on the next page, what you see here is a table. And on this table on the left, you'll see the work IDs 1.0, 1.1, and so on. These correspond to the boxes that you see at 1.1, 1.2, and they are here. Not all of them, but because it's just a demo. But you'll see that every one of these boxes is here. And you have lots of details that you could put about every box. Things like, the work name, the description, completion criteria, who's the customer, and so on. So there's a lot of details you could put about every WBS, and that's what's called the WBS dictionary. If you were using software, you just need to double click on the WBS and something pops up, like Microsoft Project, something will pop up. Let me show you what it looks like, what a WBS looks like on software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you this program. This is a free program. If you're using it by yourself, it's called OpenProj. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project here. So it's going to ask me what's the name of this project. So this is test project WBS, and this is me add forward scheduled. Okay, you don't need to know this for PMP. It's just here for demo. So I'm going to call this one I'm just going to create the whole project here, whole project. And I'm going to create below that WBS1, skip a couple of steps, and then create WBS2, couple of steps, WBS3, right? WBS3, and leave a couple of steps, and then create activity 1, activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, whoops, activity 4, activity 5, activity 6. Notice that the activities don't need to follow through in a sequence, but you cannot repeat the name of an activity. Like the activity under a WBS doesn't need to carry any naming convention. You can call it whatever. Typically, activities are named as, verb noun. So it's like do something, paint the wall, something like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this, and this is how this one software works. I'm going to indent, let me just move this. I'm going to move these out, and so that makes the whole project the master, and these are below. And then I'm going to take these two activities, move them out, take these two activities, move them out, and these two here in the bottom, move them out, indent. And I can shrink now the WBSs, right? And all I have to do is click this here on the left, and voila, we have a WBS structure. All right. Now, obviously, I can go and subdivide these and so on, but I'm just showing you what it looks like on the software as compared to what it would look like in Microsoft Word. Now, if this is what we're working with and you double click, here you can't double click on it, it won't work. But if you were here and you double clicked on this, see that pop up that you get? That's the WBS dictionary. That explains, all the details. You can even put notes here if you want. My notes are here, right? And you can, once you put your note, close it. Now you see the note shows up here. If I click it, or if I don't know, at some point, see my notes are here. So that's part of the WBS dictionary, clicking it and getting all these details, budget, duration, so on, priority, resources. It's nice free software, by the way. So that's the WBS dictionary. A lot of people are not familiar with the WBS dictionary. So I thought that would be helpful. So scope statement's done, WBS is done. The work packages at the lowest point of the WBS. And then we have the WBS dictionary. And the only thing that is left is that we need to discuss the planning packages, all right? Planning package that is shown here, as well as the control account. So planning package and control accounts, because these could show up on the exam and you need to know what they are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to the previous slide. So let's say this is our WBS, and let's assume we were building a tower and we know at some point we have to do landscaping after the tower is completed, so the outside of it. And we thought that it would be helpful to put a small amount, not a small amount, let's say we want to put $100,000 on the side. So we put $100,000 here, and for that $100,000 that we put on the side, that's going to be used for the landscaping. Forget that it says project management. Let's say that's the landscaping outside, right? This is going to be called a control account. It's a $100,000 control account that we are going to use for landscaping. So I can tell you that the planning package here, if I draw one, is going to be for landscaping, right? So we're going to use this for landscaping, landscaping, but I don't really know what the landscaping is going to be. All right. It might be a lot of green stuff being planted around. It could be just some brick walkways, but you know, it's not very clear to us and it's not a priority at the moment. So we leave it as a planning package, right? So this one down at the bottom, this here, down here is the planning package, whereas the one at the top is called the control account. Later on, when we get to that point where the landscaping needs to be done, that's when we might, you know, tender this landscaping and see what we get from contractors, and they will bid on different models. They will give us different designs for how the landscaping could be done. We try to match it as close as possible to the $100,000 budget that we have, and once we have an agreement, we give the job to someone. At that point, that planning package can now be detailed into the work that needs to happen, which is the work package. So the planning package is a temporary holding package for work that needs to be done later on that is not yet clear. We don't really know what needs to be done on it, but we put a budget for it. That's the control account, right? We put a small budget, that's the control account, and we hold it so that later on, that's the control account here, we hold it until later on. Once we know what needs to happen, then that planning package, which is this landscaping, can then be detailed out to become the work package, which then gets executed. So hopefully that helps. And I think this brings us to the very end of the Create WBS. On our next video, I will see you to discuss validate scope and the topic after that, which is control scope. All right, so see you on the next video and stay safe. Bye-bye.